Yesterday, we experienced significant drops across the entire crypto ecosystem, which have disrupted structures and led to black swan events in Bitcoin, Ethereum, Binance, and Solana. On screen, we're looking at the Bitcoin chart on a 4-hour time frame. Notice how these sharp declines we just mentioned are impacting this point, which we consider very significant. And yes, these drops can certainly scare anyone. However, as we mentioned in the last video, this key point, which is none other than the origin of the break in the accumulation process that preceded it, is a point where we were expecting the price to reach and react to it. With that said, let's now break down step by step what the market is telling us and what we can read from each structure. But for a moment, let's leave Bitcoin aside and start by analyzing Solana. Here on Solana, with the 4-hour chart, we can already see a lot of information, which we will break down now. Notice how from the inside out, we first have a creek where we are valuing an upward accumulation process. What does this mean? It means that we will be waiting for this creek to be broken to the upside at some point, marking the end of this process. On the other hand, we have a significant drop here, which is being corrected with a complex corrective pattern. Notice that we have the W, the weak Y, and currently we're seeing the bullish Z. It's no coincidence that this bullish Z has reacted over the creek, as Z patterns typically impact significant areas. At the same time, this Z allows us to draw its wedge. The wedge is an element we consider very important because since Z patterns tend to be explosive, it's not always easy to track them. But when the wedge is clear, like in this case, we can draw conclusions. So as I mentioned earlier, notice that the Z was explosive, gave us the wedge, which impacted the accumulation creek that preceded it, and then the wedge was broken with great force. And this break is no coincidence, as it impacted an area we also consider very significant, which is this defense zone. This zone is none other than the trend line of our Z pattern. And if you regularly watch our videos, you already know that as long as the trend line of the Z patterns isn't broken, the Z remains valid. So as you can imagine, this bullish Z is still in play. And if you're wondering why I started the analysis with Solana, it's because I believe it's given us a lot of information. We see it almost like an open book. Why do I say this? Because Solana is going to reveal something to us, whether the breakout of this creek and the entire accumulation process will happen quickly, or if the process is still not ready and needs a bit more time before going for that upward move. In other words, we need to see how the price reacts to this defense zone. This defense zone, as I mentioned earlier, is something we consider very crucial. If the price respects it, even if a small trap is created but then recovers, we'll be expecting this upward breakout to happen sooner rather than later. On the other hand, if it doesn't hold, if this structure is broken and we lose the defense zone and therefore the trend line of our Z pattern, we shouldn't expect an immediate rise in the price. Instead, we'll anticipate the price to continue consuming time and complete our accumulation structure. Now, let's move on to analyzing Ethereum while also keeping the 4-hour time frame in mind. Here, similar to Solana, after this drop, notice how we're anchoring a creek, which corresponds to this accumulation process. And since it's an accumulation process, it's bullish, and we'll be waiting for the price to eventually break through this creek. But before jumping ahead, let's take a closer look at the structures we're analyzing. As I mentioned earlier, this is a process we are valuing as an accumulation process. Therefore, following Wyckoff's structure, as we've seen in previous videos, we have absorption here. The price was falling sharply and immediately turned around with a lot of volume. After this drop, we are also seeing absorption, as the volume is strong compared to the volume in the previous candles. We're also measuring effort versus result here. After the sharp fall, the price turned around automatically and very quickly, so we also consider this area as absorption. And speaking of Wyckoff, let's evaluate the last point of supply. Big question is, could this be our last point of supply? That's the million-dollar question, of course, but since we don't have a crystal ball, we'll have to wait and see how the price develops. However, we do have some clues. The first clue is that this distribution process, after breaking down, has impacted the first institutional target. While this doesn't mean that the price has to immediately turn around, we've seen this happen multiple times. So if after the distribution process collapses and at the same time reaches the first target, the price turns around, it wouldn't be too crazy to consider. Actually, this is something we need to keep an eye on. Clue number 2, let's see if anyone can guess what it is, will be cross-analysis, and that's why we place so much importance on Solana's defense zone. And what do I mean by this? Well, yes, we're going to have to closely monitor all the assets at the same time because collectively it's much easier to gather information. Why is that? If we see that Solana respects the defense zone, confirms it, and even gives us a little fake out, why not? But then respects it again, this could indicate that Ethereum is ready to reverse. On the other hand, if Solana doesn't respect that defense zone, we wouldn't expect that sudden upward move in Ethereum that I mentioned before. Instead, it would likely continue with a lot of momentum, and if it reaches this point, this dotted line, we wouldn't be surprised. Why do I say that? Let's zoom out a bit to get a better view. Here we have a strong bearish impulse, and you can probably guess what's coming. We could expect a complex corrective pattern here, where we've already seen the W and the Y. Therefore, with the dotted line being the corrective patterns guideline, it wouldn't surprise us to see Ethereum reach these levels. Of course, it doesn't necessarily have to, but if it does, it wouldn't surprise us at all, since at that point, we'd be expecting expecting the possible development of a bullish Z wave. Now, let's analyze BNB, but before that.
Welcome to Crypto Insight, your ethical and moral channel for cryptocurrency technical analysis. Here, we really know what we're talking about. We conduct advanced technical analysis that has been developed for over 12 years. We upload videos several times a week. If you're enjoying what you're seeing, let me know and leave a comment with your opinion. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click on the bell so you don't miss the next opportunity.
Now, we return to Binance's chart, also on the 4-hour time frame, and here you'll notice many similarities with the charts we've just been analyzing. First, we have a creek here, the white line, which corresponds to an accumulation process we're considering. And as I mentioned before, since it's an accumulation process, we're expecting that at some point this creek will break upwards. But of course, before that breakout happens, the process needs to fully form. Let's not forget that we're talking about a whack-off process, and in this process, we can see absorption with sharp price drops and very quick rebounds with extremely high volume relative to the volume traded in previous days. Let me move the chart a bit so you can see it better. Notice how we also have a sharp drop here followed by a quick rebound with highly disproportionate volume, so we're also seeing absorption here. It's also very typical to see how before the process ends, a defense zone or supply line forms where the price gets respected before finally breaking out. So if we recall, we started the video by saying that we had a black swan event. This black swan is the sharp drop that broke this microstructure, which in this case is a distribution. And this breakdown, this sharp drop, came and hit nothing less than this defense zone. So if we cross-reference the information, we have Bitcoin hitting the origin of the breakout. As we mentioned at the beginning, we have Solana and its sharp drop also hitting a defense zone and Ethereum hitting right at the target of the distribution. So in this case, seeing BNB impacting this defense zone doesn't surprise us at all. And of course, it will be very important to see how the price reacts here. We'll need to watch if it respects the zone or if we get a little fake out while simultaneously cross-checking information with other assets to anticipate and know how to react. Now, let's go back to Bitcoin for a detailed step-by-step analysis. But before we do, let me tell you that access to our Crypto Insight Premium channel is still open. Don't miss this opportunity to join our channel, where we hold daily live sessions analyzing the market in real time, and also look for entry points for trades day by day. The entry requirements are very simple. You need to be a user of BITCOINS or BITDEFI with our referral code. You also need to deposit at least $100 worth of cryptocurrencies into your BITCOINS or BITDEFI accounts and use this account as your primary trading account. In other words, you have to trade. Once you meet these requirements, you'll need to fill out a form with 5 simple questions. Within 72 hours, we'll get back to you with access to our private channel. In the pinned comment of this video, we're providing direct access to the form. So don't miss out on this opportunity. Join us. We're waiting for you. Now let's get back to Bitcoin's 4-hour chart. On a more macro level, we have a trend line, which I'm marking in yellow, that corresponds to what we see as a reaccumulation process. So as you can imagine, since this is a reaccumulation, we're expecting the price to eventually break upward at some point. But let's not rush it. Let's zoom in a bit and analyze the recent events. Here we see an accumulation process and it's already broken upward. This line I'm marking in yellow is nothing more than its creek. That's why the recent drop in the last few days hitting this creek is significant. It's a revisit to the origin of the breakout. This revisit to the origin of the breakout is something quite common to see. That's why, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, it didn't surprise us that the price hit the zone. And as we discussed in Monday's video, because of the size of this whole accumulation process and how the price had been developing, and considering the size of the process that was unfolding after the breakout, we see this point as a completely reasonable level. We'll always expect structures to maintain a certain proportionality. And here we return to the million-dollar question, could this point be the last point of supply in this more macro process? As we always say, we don't have a crystal ball, but cross-analysis will definitely be a huge help at times like these. Let's remember everything we went over earlier about Solana's defense zones and also BNBs. Knowing this, we're going to pay very close attention to how the price reacts at this point, while also observing how it behaves in the other structures. Because if we lose this zone, we wouldn't be expecting this point to be the last point of supply. Instead, we'd expect the price to continue developing, completing this macro reaccumulation process, and then we'll reassess how the structures are behaving. Without fear of being repetitive, we're going to pay special attention to how prices react within the different structures of the assets we've reviewed so that future moves don't catch us by surprise. If you enjoyed this advanced technical analysis, let me know in the comments. Also, give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and click the notification bell so you don't miss any future analysis. Be sure to share this video with your friends and other trading and crypto communities so more people can grow in their trading journey. Best of luck with your positions, and see you next time.